Now, lack of services is leading to some South Africans taking matters into their own hands. From filling potholes to solar panels for power, as well as boreholes for water, people are doing things for themselves. Government seems to have failed its citizens. So let's discuss this with governance and public affairs expert. Professor Sam Koma joins me right now for this conversation. And Prof, thank you so much for extending your time to us to have this discussion. Quite important because we're talking governance issues in the country. We're talking ailing infrastructure in the country. This at the back of even the city of Tshwane's residents lamenting a lack of service delivery. They say, amongst other things, they now have to, seek the services of, private home associations, costing them more money while they still continue to pay for these services to the city. This is just one example, Prof, amongst many. But how would you, with that example, rate governance in South Africa?
Yeah, thank you, Tumelo, for the opportunity. So essentially, the state of infrastructure decay we're facing in the country could be attributed to a myriad of issues. At the core of the problem largely is issues around poor project management skills, poor planning, inadequate technical skills in the form of engineering skills, especially in areas around water, roads, and related infrastructure. You also have state institutions that, to a large extent, fail to spend on capital budgets. And also there's this fixation with public investment being channeled to new projects at the expense of maintaining existing infrastructure by state institutions. But also we have the other problem that state institutions are failing to leverage on public-private partnerships in the form of soliciting expertise, capital, and resources from the private sector. Because to a large extent, the private sector is having this capital and also resources that can be used to drive the implementation of these huge public infrastructure projects. You're quite right. You have the case in the city of Tshwane. You also have the Guyane Water Project, which commenced in 2014, but it is yet to be completed so that about 50 villages can benefit from access to water service, which is part of the project. So there have been cost overruns since 2014 to date, and that has now cost the state about 3 billion rand. But at the core of the problem, it's this inadequate skills that the state institutions are failing to acquire from the market as part of assisting state institutions to be able to drive the implementation of these infrastructure projects. And we have the case also in eThekwini. You know that the Durban Ratepayers Association has also taken a stance that we are not going to pay any rates until such time we see improved provision of quality municipal services by the eThekwini Metro. Then they'll be able to release the funds that they've set up independently.
And that in turn continues to be a challenge and a problem, for municipalities across the board around the country, Prof. But you mentioned, a significant point around a skills deficit within our government that is lacking. And you remind me of a time when President Cyril Ramaphosa had mentioned in Parliament that there wasn't enough skills in town planning. I'm sure you witnessed the uproar from town planners and professionals saying, listen, we have our education, we have our experience, but it seems the barriers to entry, the red tape, and the lack of government in terms of initiating that partnership with qualified town planners broke down that communication and has led to the ailing infrastructure that we witnessed today. So let's talk about skills deficit for a moment. Is there really a shortage of skills in the country and capacity, Prof, or government is just not looking for them at the right places?
Yes, no, there is abundant skills across the board. You have adequate skilled town planners, regional planners. We have accountants or chartered accountants. We have engineers. And the good thing is that we've got professional bodies like the Engineering Council of South Africa. You also have SAICA. You also have the other associations that accommodate and house these expertise skills we're looking for. But there is failure to harness and forge collaborations with professional bodies as part of assisting the state institutions to improve on the issue around institutional capacity, so that at the end of the day, we are able to have these infrastructure projects planned properly, costed properly, but also they are executed and completed within the shortest time
Right.
because of this scale. So we need state institutions to prioritize the issue of appointing the right people for the right positions, and also ensuring that these professionals who are coming on board exemplify the highest standard of professional ethics.
In my last question to you, Prof, before I let you go, I mean, I think our infrastructure is at a dire state of, urgent attention. It needs urgent attention. If we're seeing residents fill in potholes themselves, if we're seeing them, almost looking for services that otherwise should be provided by the state, but they rather prefer to be self-reliant at this point, how long do you think it will take us until government takes these calls and concerns by residents and South Africans seriously? How long do you think it will take us to see our infrastructure at a place, at a state, which we could say these systems are now operating, more thoroughly and smoothly than before?
Yes, we can have a turnaround situation in the shortest possible manner if state institutions begin to prioritize the issue of proper planning, but also prioritize the issue of spending infrastructure grants and funds that get allocated to state institutions, and thus ensuring that they acquire these skills that are required to ensure that they're able to fast track the implementation of infrastructure projects for the benefit of the whole of society.
All right, then, Prof, thank you so much for speaking to me about this. Professor Sam Koma, this morning for us right here on Newslink, our governance expert, telling us more about his perspective on the ailing infrastructure in the country, but also what needs to be done, saying that if government prioritise spending at this point, that turnaround period can also be achieved to see, of course, our infrastructure at a state where we can say we're globally competitive and we have smooth running systems.